Welcome to Reaper for Podcasting. My name is Daniel Abendroth, and in this video, we're going to cover how to edit a podcast episode with multiple tracks. Let's go. So Reaper can easily handle multi-track episodes, but it might not be, by default, the easiest thing to do. So I'm going to show you a couple actions and a couple of keyboard shortcuts that we can tweak in order to make it a lot easier. So to get started, let's go ahead and take a look at these actions. Well, there's one custom action in particular. So in Reaper, if you go to Actions, Show Action List is how you get to your actions. And I am going to cover that in a future video, but for now, we're just going to touch on just real basic things. And the custom action we're going to create is this multi-track item delete. And if we take a look at it by clicking Edit Action, you can see that it turns ripple editing off, remove items, tracks, envelope, point, depending on focus, and then turns ripple editing back on. And then I've also clicked Consolidate Undo Points. Otherwise, whenever you do this, you'll have to hit undo 3 times in order to undo everything. Whereas if you have this turned on, it's just one click undo and you're good to go. So let me show you how to set this up. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one, and then I'm going to recreate it. So click New Action, New Custom Action. Now we need to find those three actions. So we're going to, in this filter, just search for Ripple. And there's 2 that we want, and it's going to be at the very bottom. So set ripple editing off. You can click and drag or double click. And then we want to set ripple editing all tracks. I'm going to double click to add it into there. And then the other one is remove items. And it's one of these 2. So depending on focus. So click and drag this. And we want that to be the second action. So what this is going to do is set ripple editing off, so that way there's no ripple editing. It's going to remove whatever item you have highlighted, and then it's going to turn ripple editing back on for all tracks. And this makes it really easy as you're editing an episode. It's just a one click to delete rather than having to go back and forth, turning ripple editing on and off, and potentially forgetting to turn it back on. So let's go ahead and give this a name. I'm going to name it multi-track item, if I can type, oh my God, delete, consolidate undo points, click OK. And now we have it right here. And I like to use the key D. So I'm going to add the keyboard shortcut, the letter D, to this. So down here, we just click Add, and then hit D and OK. And if this is the first time that you're doing this, you're probably going to get prompted that D is set to dynamic item split. I don't use that feature a whole lot, so I don't mind that being overwritten. If you're using a different key, just take a look at whatever is prompting you. If that's something that you can live without, go ahead. Or if you want to find a new key to assign to it. The other thing we want to do, and if you saw my previous video, you probably already did this, but just in case you haven't, this is how we're going to set up our delete key. So whenever you're editing, you can just highlight a section, hit a button, and it'll delete whatever is highlighted. So in order to find that, just click Find Shortcut, hit Control Delete, which is the default. If you're on Mac, it's probably going to be Command Delete. But whatever it is, just do a search for item, cut selected areas of item, and I've assigned it to C. So whatever key that you want, just click Add, type that key in, and click OK. So I already have it set up, so I'm good to go. Now, the last thing we want to do is assign Auto Trim Split to a keyboard shortcut. And I'll show you what that does in a minute, but let's go ahead and just get that assigned. So under Filter, just do a search for Auto Trim / Split. And it's this one right here, Item, Auto Trim Split Items Remove Silence. So I'm going to set it to Alt S, just do whatever you feel like. Since S is a split key, this auto trim split makes sense for me to just do Alt S. So it's going to do Alt S, click OK, and now that's assigned. And that's all we need to do for actions. The next thing we want to do is make sure that ripple editing is on for all tracks, and it'll have all 3 of these lines highlighted. So this is ripple editing off, per track, all tracks. All right, now with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started working on the episode. We'll create a new project by hitting Control or Command N. And then just navigate to wherever you want to save the project folder. I'm just going to do Reaper Media, the default folder for now, and just make sure this create subdirectory for project is checked on. So that way it creates a folder and everything has a nice place, nice little home for everything. Now I'm just going to name this multi-track example. And then click save. All right, so let's get started. There are two ways to bring in audio. You can either just like click and drag from your file explorer, or we can go up to insert media file and then just navigate to wherever you have your audio. So for me, I'm gonna bring in audio from an episode of the Podcast Editors Mastermind that I worked on, and I'm gonna bring in these four. So highlight all the files that you want, and then click open. So you can choose if you want separate tracks or a single track. Since they're all separate speakers, we want them all on separate tracks. And now Reaper is going to take a minute to, examine all the files and build the peak. So that way you can see the waveform in Reaper. All right, so with all that out of the way, we can go ahead and start working on the audio. So as you can see, we have 4 tracks, and then 2 tracks were recorded in the same room, so there's some crossbleed that we'll have to deal with. But for the most part, the rest are recorded separately, so there's not going to be the crossbleed there. So it'll be pretty easy to kind of clean it up a little bit. So I've already got them aligned, and I've done some processing already, so we're not going to worry about any of that. I'm just going to show you how to actually make the edits. So the first thing that we want to do is get rid of all these long periods of silence. So you could do it manually by clicking S and like dragging, or going through and editing each one individually. But Reaper has a built-in function that does that automatically. So we're going to highlight all 3 tracks, and then we're going to use our shortcut key that we created earlier for the auto trim split. So mine is Alt S, and it brings up the auto trim split items menu. So this will analyze all the audio and then cut all the long pieces of silence. So these are the default values that I use. Threshold is minus 21 dB, and that is going to be whenever something goes below minus 21 dB, that's when the trim will kick in. The hysteresis, I can't remember how to pronounce that. I have it set to minus 30. And what that does is it catches the trailing audio. So a lot of people, whenever they're finishing their sentence, they kind of trail off at the end. So with this, it makes sure to catch that little trailing to make sure that actual audio isn't cut that you want to keep. Ignore silence shorter for 200 milliseconds. So all these I set to 200, and then I set this to 0. So these are the default values that I use. And what this does is just make sure that all the silences will get caught, but it won't actually cut into whenever somebody's actually talking. And you might need to tweak these for yourselves, play around with it, whatever. But this has worked really well for me. And then the mode, you want to make sure that it's split and remove silent areas. So it's going to make the split and then delete all the pieces of silence. And then you also want to click run signal through track effects for detection if you're processing your audio before doing this. So what I mean by that is if you're using the Reaper FX for like compression or like leveling audio, you want to make sure to click this on because it'll run it through the effects before going through and cutting the silences. So if you are using compression or like any leveling that are like boosting your audio, you want to make sure that the auto trim is taking that into account. Otherwise, if it's like quiet audio that you're boosting later, it might miss that. So just make sure that you have this clicked on. Once that's done, click process. And this is going to take a while for me because I have 4 tracks that are over an hour long. The longer the audio, the longer this is going to take. So I'll see you when we're done. Okay, that actually wasn't that long. I don't know if you noticed, I didn't make a cut there. So a lot quicker than I expected. But now you see all that silence is gone, and now we have this jumbled mess, but this is a lot easier to work with because now we can move audio without having to worry about where it lines up. It's just a lot easier doing it this way. Okay, so make sure that we have Ripple editing all tracks, and then click home to go back. And now we're honestly just ready to get started. So let me showcase what that custom action that we created, the multi-track item delete. So by default, whenever you have an item with ripple editing all and you hit delete, if you notice, it deleted everything from both tracks. And that's not what we want, because we want to keep this audio just fine, but just remove this because this is the crossbleed. By default, the way you would do this is turn off ripple editing, highlight the track you want, click delete, and then turn ripple editing back on. That is just a lot of steps, and it's going to slow you down tremendously. So that's why we created that custom action. So now we can click on an item and just hit D or whatever keyboard shortcut you decided, and boom, it turns off ripple editing, deletes, and turns it back on. Easy as that. So now whenever you're going through and you see some of this, or if you see like maybe a jostle or something, you can easily just delete all this audio that you don't want without having to worry about deleting the audio from the other tracks. So much easier. And because we also have ripple editing all on, you can adjust everything. So when you click on an item, it'll move everything behind that track. So that way, whenever you make a delete of something, so I'm going to make a split and just delete that, you'll see everything behind it move forward. So that way you can make all these edits and nothing is going to get out of sync. So the last thing I want to showcase is we set the edit button to C. I did for C. By default, it's Control Delete. And what that does, if you watched an earlier video, you probably know this already. But whenever you highlight something, let's say this is an and you highlight this and hit the button, for me it's C, it deletes whatever is highlighted. And since we have ripple editing all, it deletes everything behind it. So now we can go through and just make whatever edits we need to. Obviously, this is not me editing. This is kind of chaotic, but I just want to showcase how that works. So now with those few functions, you can easily just edit a multi-track episode without hassle. I hope that makes sense. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them down below and I will definitely respond to them. Also, if you have ideas for other videos or other topics that you want me to cover, please let me know. I'd love to help you out and kind of showcase whatever you need and share my knowledge with you. And also, before I go, I do want to encourage you to join the Facebook group. There's a whole bunch of people that use Reaper for podcasting. And if you have any questions, there's a lot of knowledge in there that you can definitely find a solution to whatever problem you're having. I'll put a link down in the description, or if you go to rothmedia.audio/Reaper group, it'll take you directly there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.